Neuroplasticity changed my life. Here's what you need to know. It's also what I teach my clients. So first of all, let's explain what neuroplasticity is. It is your brain's ability to be malleable, changeable. It can lay down new neural pathways at any point in your life. And once upon a time, neuroscientists thought that that was not the case at all. They thought that your brain was very fixed by a certain point in your life. And in fact, in one of my earlier videos, I describe very openly how I observed neuroplasticity in action in my stepfather, who at the time had been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. But his brain, which was demonstrated by brain scans, his brain found new ways to lay down new neural pathways so that as some part of the brain were going inactive, other parts of the brain became active. And it was an incredibly exciting find that I happened to be with Dr. Brad Bouvet, who is at the Mayo Clinic, or he was at that time, and he was treating my stepfather. And Dr. Bouvet walked me through the process and explained what I was seeing on the scans. So that really opened my mind to what kinds of things in my life do I think are fixed, and where can I start applying this concept and this understanding of neuroplasticity that I can start training myself to lay down new pathways in my brain to start doing and achieving things in my life that previously I thought were unachievable, undoable, for lack of a better word. And the first place I started observing the language that I use when I'm speaking about myself, about my life, what I think is possible, what I don't think is possible. And I really started to discover that the language I was using just by default, because so many of us fall into this trap, just by default, I was speaking rather negatively about myself, my achievements, and things that I thought were possible for my life, or more importantly, that I thought were not possible for my life. And once I really grabbed hold of that concept of neuroplasticity and what Dr. Bouvet had to teach me, I thought, okay, so now that I understand these things about the language I'm using to speak to myself, what are the things I need to do to start? I didn't have to tell myself things that weren't true. For instance, at the time, I weighed probably about 40 pounds more than I do right now. And the language I used about what was possible versus impossible was, instead of saying, oh my gosh, it's so much work to lose 40 pounds, I'll never be able to do it because I had gone through menopause. And anybody who's experienced that and experienced the weight gain knows how stubborn it can be. But I started saying to myself, what are the things I can do today that help me start building this pattern of who I want to be at 40 pounds lighter? What are the things that she does in the future that every day stacked up and added up to who she became, if that makes sense? Am I making sense at all right now to you? So I started observing the language. I started asking myself very different kinds of questions. What can I do today? I also started telling myself today does matter. And as I started making progress in losing the weight, I also made progress around, at the time I had a gray zone drinking habit. I've talked a lot on my channel about what a gray zone drinking habit is. I'll just briefly describe it for you here. Is I found myself in a place of, I never drank to get drunk. I was not that kind of person, but I did drink anywhere from 1 to 3 glasses of wine every night because I had no skill set and no tools to turn my mind down or to turn my mind off. And the kind of pace and the kind of frenetic thinking patterns that were going on in my head at that point in my life were exhausting. They were absolutely exhausting. So in order to get myself out of that gray zone drinking area, I had to start asking myself very different kinds of questions. So instead of saying, why can't I do this? Why can't I break this loop? I started saying, why do I have this life that I live right now? I have to drink this wine to turn my mind down. Why is that okay for me? And if I don't do this thing, are there different tools I can use to replace that get me the results that I want? So baby step after baby step, asking better and better questions helped me to start rewiring my brain to build a new pathway that supported me to leave the weight behind, to leave the gray zone drinking behind. And so as I got further and further down that pathway, and my brain became more and more fixed, and soon it became the default pathway. So the drinking to turn the mind down, the cravings disappeared because that pathway in my brain went dormant, because the new pathway, it was getting exercised on a daily basis about why I am a non-drinker, why I am a fit person. That pathway was being exercised every single day, and the old pathway was not pursued. So one of the ways you can think about it is, if you are walking a path through, let's say there's a field of grass out in front of you, and you walk the same path every day, eventually you have evidence of you walking through that path, right? Because the grass becomes matted down. The other grass stays fluffy and untrampled, but you can see the path that has been created. So that's just really a metaphor to show you that your consistent thoughts and your consistent actions lay down physical structures in your brain, these neural connections in your brain, to move you in the direction that you are most practicing. Does that make sense? I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you want me to explain it more in future videos. But as I started embracing those things, and I used and harnessed the concept of neuroplasticity, my entire life started to change. What happened was the weight came off. I'm now 6 months away from being in the best shape of my life when I turn 60 next year. I walked away from a corporate career and a medical career that I loved so much, and I understood the real purpose and value that I brought every day. But I also understood that it was an unsustainable pace. And I was able to find a new career, started my own business, started a speaking career. I'm a first-time author this year. And all of those things were possible because I changed the language around the way I spoke to myself. I changed the kinds of questions I asked myself. And those two things, combined with harnessing that knowledge about the way neuroplasticity works in the brain, are what got me to this point right now. And I do the exact same thing for my clients. I have an entire 12-week program that is designed specifically to retrain your brain, rewire your brain, so that you can move away from all the things that don't serve you anymore, and you can develop new patterns that help you support this new structure and new wiring in your brain. It takes a solid 12 weeks, and you need to do the work regularly, but it's absolutely possible. So if any of you want to know more about what it looks like to work with me, my system is called Revive, and like I said, it's a 12-week program. Go ahead and reach out to me. The link is in the description. You can click on my link that will take you right to my calendar, and you can schedule a 30-minute session with me. There's no charge for the session at all. I call it a clarity call. And what we do is we sit and we walk through what's really important to you at this point in your life right now. And then we look at possible ways that you can move forward. And we find out if what I'm offering for you gives you what you're going to need right now. Because sometimes what I offer isn't always for everybody. But I have a very big network of people that if I'm not able to help you, I can refer you to someone else. But the biggest purpose for the call is to help you understand yourself better and what's really important to you at this time in your life. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is I believe in you, and I want you to make today matter. Take care, everybody.